I have no slideshow for you this evening. I have a few words on something that's been missing from the initial report that I saw that was referred to just earlier. But we're still short on facts when it comes to the economics of all this. Basically, what this study that's going to cost $600,000 is supposed to do is to give us some idea of what the costs and the benefits are of this proposed project. Well, costs are, from an economist's point of view, the value of the resources that would be taken away in order to create the project, and the benefits are the increase in the future income of the people and benefits to the people as we proceed with the operation of the project. Now, the first thing I have to point out, and has already been suggested, this is going to be a long time from now. There is a very, very strong possibility that only a few in this room will be around to see the completion of this project by the time it comes to fruition, if it's approved and if it moves very quickly. We're talking about a project that may be 30 to 50 years away. I think you have to ask then, well, what are going to be the jobs created? For whom are the jobs being created? We have this idea that we're going to build a dam, and this is going to take a lot of labor. Today, construction is highly mechanized. It is a high-skilled relationship between an operator and a piece of machinery, and it does not take the kind of machinery, it does not take the kind of people who built the Hoover Dam in the 1930s, or the TVA dams in the 1930s. This is a much different kind of world in which we live. Those of you who are still looking at the screen up here, that has nothing to do with anything I'm saying. But that's okay. It may be more interesting than anything I have. So the question is, what are we going to purchase in the way of property? Are we going to have property payments to the owners of private property? How will that be valued? When will that be paid? What about the public property that's involved here? That is the actual land that is currently in public ownership, which means the roads that would be covered, and particularly the state highways that are involved, and the reconstruction of those highways, if that's to be done. There's going to be a loss of use for recreation. There's currently a certain amount of recreation that takes place along the river and the nearby land. And the question then becomes, well, how much is the value of that recreation? There are environmental qualities that will be lost and that we've heard about in somewhat so far. But there's a question of the habitat for both fauna and flora that has to be considered. There's the relocation of existing households. Where are people going to move who are going to be forced to move? And what about the relocation of existing highways? What about the damage to homes and businesses that are, as you just heard, on the periphery of all of this, outside of the context of the reservoir itself, but are at a distance from it? The benefits, as we tend to understand them, is the augmentation of a future water supply. Well, we've just heard that we really don't need the reservoir for a future water supply, so the value of that augmentation is likely to be low. There are those who say there'll be increased property values for adjacent properties. That is, that there are people who are going to build fantastic mansions along these waterways. But that really is a wonderful fantasy that is being proposed, that there's going to be this place where these marvelous homes are built. Because people are thinking of Geist Reservoir around Indianapolis. They're not thinking of Monroe Reservoir down south of Bloomington, where there are virtually no homes that have been built, and it's, there's a hotel there, there's a dock for some boats, but basically is no really increased residential value. We have to ask who's going to pay for this project. That is the federal government going to put up the money? What reason does anyone in Idaho or Montana or Ohio have for us to build a reservoir in Indiana? I would think in a conservative state like Indiana, we would say that we ought to build our own reservoir, we ought to finance it ourselves. Well, who are we who are going to finance it? Presumably, it would be the present and future customers of the water company. And that says that might be a very nice idea if all this water were shipped then to Indianapolis so that the total cost of the project could be borne by the people who live in Indianapolis. But that's not going to happen. Who's going to benefit? That's always a question. Who's going to make money out of this project? I don't know. But there should be some analysis in this report that's being produced for $600,000, which is a lovely contract, probably 10 times its value. But who's going to be the likely beneficiaries? I think that the construction companies will be the greatest beneficiaries because their payments will come first. Remember, this is going to take a long time from now. There's going to be a lot of studies by a lot of consultants who will make a good deal of funds out of this. What are the real economic development objectives of this program? If it's going to take a long time, if this can't happen for 10 or 15 or 50 years, then you have to say, what is the real benefit of this other than fulfilling some kind of long-term dream? Now, it is not wrong to have long-term dreams, but you have to ask yourself, are there better uses for the money than building the reservoir? Can these economic development objectives be achieved by other projects? How do the costs and benefits of these other projects compare with the costs and benefits of this project? For example, what about improving the Anderson and Muncie schools corporations as an alternative? What would be the long-term benefits of that improvement, and what would be the short-term benefits? One of the things is to attract high-income people and the kinds of jobs that support high-income people to the Anderson-Muncie area. Currently, the schools of Anderson and Muncie do not get a great deal of respect. Large numbers of people do not move here because of the schools. And it might be much better to improve the schools for the current residents of the Anderson and Muncie schools, and I'm talking about other schools within both counties, than it would be to spend money on the reservoir. What about rehabilitating existing residential neighborhoods? The newspaper column that I write used to be carried by the Anderson paper, it used to be carried by the Muncie paper, it used to be carried by many papers. There are still some that do carry it. But I wrote an article one time about Anderson and its very nice housing stock. But what it needs is rehabilitation. There are many, many lovely streets in Muncie and in Anderson that need upgrading. The streets themselves, but mainly the houses along the streets. They're just old, they need paint, they need attention, because the people who have been living there don't have the money to give them the attention that they deserve. So it's important that we think about other kinds of projects that could be done with some of the money that would be used for this project. And now we'll go back to the slideshow.